Muchachos y muchachas. So I've been wanting to do this video for a while now. Human trafficking. Only within recent years did the general masses hear about this murky, ugly practice of exploiting human beings. We have seen in real life examples unfold before our eyes, such as big profile cases like Jeffrey Epstein, and on tangent unfolds of the suggested clientele, some of which, to the public's shock, are upper echelon elites that hold high positions and power within our society. Yet, those people aspire for the deepest, most depraved acts on earth. But it's not just them. Human trafficking is caused by all walks of life, from all political, religious, cultural demographics, from all different types of professions, positions, scholars. It happens by all types of people to all types of people. That's why it's so scary, because no one is really safe if you don't recognize the signs. More to come on that. But today, we need to start back at the basics. What exactly is human trafficking? Now, I know you've probably heard this definition repetitiously. However, I think because our senses have been inundated with headlines and stories on this very subject, we have somehow lost the depth of this meaning.
Conservatives are screaming about it in America and why they feel that Tucker didn't push you enough on this case.
Push me.
Okay. So first and foremost, one thing I want to clarify for people that are watching this is that there seems to be this understanding that you are being prosecuted, or you're being indicted rather, for human sex trafficking charges. I've read the indictment, and I do want to make it clear. The words human sex trafficking occur on the indictment, but then it makes it very clear that what they're referring to is they've kind of extended the term. It's not what we think about in America when you think of a bunch of children being put into a truck and taken over the border against their will.
Candace, girl, what?
It's not what we think about in America when you think of a bunch of children being put into a truck and taken over the border against their will. They're basically saying that if you trick a woman into coming into a country by using the lover boy method, then they consider that to be human sex trafficking. So the definition has definitely expanded. Over time.
Well, it's also ridiculously misogynistic to believe that women can't make their own decisions on anything. So the whole thing about it is misogynistic. But yeah, you're correct. That's a very important distinction.
Essentially what they're saying is we have a show in America called 90 Day Fiancé. That is the lover boy method, is women that go over to the U.S. They're clearly coming for citizenship, but these women kind of get duped and they sponsor these people. This would be the same vein of what they're trying to describe. I've read it myself, of what human sex trafficking can be, which is a woman fell for you, fell in love, moved over here, overseas, but it's only because you were very convincing. That is the definition given in the indictment of what they're referring to.
Listen, when I heard this reckless redefinition of human trafficking, I wanted to throw a chair across the room. And hey, look, despite what your opinion is on Andrew Tate, we aren't going to concentrate on him today. So don't fret, if you're a tater tot, that is. And look, Candace is a very influential woman with a platform of millions. Misleading people on the definition of human trafficking is not only endangering current victims, but also endangers future ones, because the perception of it would be skewed should the perpetrator believe such a misinterpretation. And you're probably thinking, well, who are you to clarify this definition? Well, my friend, let me introduce you to myself. My name is Natalie Denise. I have spent my downtime within the last decade volunteering within outreach ministries for victim advocacy within the world of combating human trafficking and aftercare. I've done things like outreaching to cantinas, street outreach, survivor mentorship, and child and adult safe house volunteering and visiting, as well as surveying the border in those illicit activities that are happening as these migrants cross with the coyotes. I've also spoken at various seminars and including academic accredited events. So yeah, I know a lot about human trafficking. And what I know with my experience is that the trust me bro sciences of the interwebs going unchecked will produce this mess. More derailed takes on human trafficking by people who are making this delusional interpretation of the definition by, get ready for it, their feelings. Saying wild things like these are grown adults who could have made their own decisions and could have left at any point negates and undermines the very elements contained in the definition of human trafficking. Let's take a look-see, shall we? The U.S. Department of Justice defines it like this. Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons, is a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor or services to engage in commercial sex acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Exploitation of a minor for commercial sex is human trafficking, regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion was used. At first glance, this may seem straightforward, but each word is packed with meaning that I assure you, if not known, will be discarded very easily. There are a few words I feel that we need to expand on. Let's take a look at this even slower. All right, so let's take it from the top. Human trafficking is also known as trafficking in persons is a crime. Now, a crime is defined by the Merriam-Webster's dictionary as an illegal act for which someone can be punished by the government, especially a gross violation of law, a grave offense, especially against morality, a criminal activity, something reprehensible, foolish, or disgraceful. Okay, so that is what a crime is defined by. Well, this crime would involve compelling or coercing a person. Okay, so let's stop there. What does compel mean? Well, when we take a look at the definition of compelling, it says here very oversimplified by the Merriam-Webster's dictionary as forceful or demanding attention or convincing. But I also want to show you guys the Oxford definition of compelling: to force or oblige someone to do something, bring about something by the use of force or pressure, to drive forcibly. Okay, so that is what compel or compelling a person means. Now let's jump to the other verb part of this definition, which is coercion. Now coercion or coerce, defined by Merriam-Webster's, is to compel to an act or choice, to achieve by force or threat, to restrain or dominate by force. So to coerce, also defined by the Oxford Dictionary, says to persuade, and it says in parentheses, an unwilling person to do something by force or threats, okay, to obtain something by using force or threat. So let me give you guys an example of what each of these look like, right? If it's coercion or compelling somebody to do something against their will, or to even be frauded into, which I'm going to go over a little bit later because there are different definitions around the word that actually utilize the word fraud. In fact, actually, before I do that, this very definition at the end, when they are talking about the exploitation of minors, they actually do mention fraud at the very end, where it says, regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion was used. Fraud is defined by this: wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain, or a person or thing intended to deceive others, typically by unjustifiably claiming or being credited with accomplishments or qualities. Okay, so let's park it right there. I want to share a few examples to give you guys an idea of what coercion and what compelling and fraud may look like. So let's take it to an example at the border, for instance. A lot of migrants and a lot of people don't know why this is so bad with this lax border policy, because so many migrants are getting taken advantage of in this way. But for example, when migrants come over, sometimes the coyotes or smugglers, whatever you want to call them, people who are actually soliciting the service of smuggling the migrant over to the United States, will name a price in a Latin country, whether it's in Mexico or Honduras or wherever they're coming from, and they will solicit a price for them to, basically bring the migrant over. When the migrant then agrees to pay this price, then the coyote will bring the migrant over to the United States. They're physically here over the border. And sometimes what will happen is the cartel, the coyote, they will then coerce the migrant for more money, thus leading them into indentured servitude. Let me explain that. So when a migrant comes over, the coyote said, okay, the price was, let's just say $5,000 in Mexico or in Venezuela. But now that you're in the United States, that has since inflated, and now you actually owe me $3,000 more, or else we can't let you go into the United States, or what have you, or they'll threaten their family or threaten their safety, or the list goes on. So then the migrant, who probably has spent their entire life savings just to pay the price to be smuggled into the United States, will then obviously not have the funds to pay for the now scammed, turned over price. So what the coyote or what the cartel member, whoever it is that, or the human T-worder will do, is they will then coerce them into indentured servitude, whether that is by labor or by commercial sex acts. And so this is what that looks like. The coyote will then say, okay, well, because you can't pay the debt that you owe me, which is $3,000 more, and you will have to work this off. And when you pay it off with your labor, then I will let you go into the United States. Now, here is where the murky gray area exists, because who is really keeping track of the debt that the migrant is now enlisted with, right? Of course, the cartel and the coyotes, who are not of the best characters, know this. They know that the migrant will not be keeping track of the calendar or of the days or what have you. And thus, that is how a migrant can get entangled in as an indentured servant, right? Or, as I have in my experience have seen with my own eyes, they can get sold off to cantinas as an example, to then be sold off as a sex worker. So that's just one example. Another example of coercion or compelling a victim to do the labor, the service, or the commercial sex act is blackmail. Blackmail is defined like this: the action treated as a criminal offense of demanding payment or another benefit from someone in return for not revealing compromising or damaging information about them. Okay, so I'm going to name out a hypothetical situation, but I assure you, with all of the human trafficking headlines and stories that I see out there, this is one of the most common methods of human trafficking. Now, a lover boy, what they will do is they will romance a partner or a victim with the immoral intent to exploit them, not to romance them, not for a relationship, not for a healthy relationship. They will romance them with the intent to exploit them. So what can happen in situations like this is that the lover boy pimps or the Romeo pimps, what they will do is romance a partner, make them believe they're in a one-on-one relationship, and then they will request explicit photos from their what is supposed to be their romantic partner. They then get these romantic partner explicit photos, and the victim, thinking that they're just giving it to their boyfriend, the lover boy will then flip that, exploit the person, and say, hey, I'm going to send every single one of your friends, your family, your coworkers, your acquaintances these photos of you, and reveal who you truly are. if you do not do this for me. Okay. And so that's where they can then exploit that partner into doing things like explicit work for profit. Okay. So that's just one situation on blackmail. Another form of coercion or compelling or fraud is by threats and by holding them psychologically against their will. Now, let's start with the threats part. So this does happen a lot where the exploiter, the trafficker, the pimp will threaten the victim and say something like, I will hurt your family, whether it is their children or it is their family members, people that they love. They say that they will hurt them and they will dangle this as a carrot for them to then get entangled to do whatever the trafficker or the pimp wants them to do. And of course, there are other methods that the exploiter, such as the trafficker, the pimp, the coyote, the smuggler, will do or will enlist over the victim in order for them to become compelled or coerced to perform the exploitative act of labor or service or commercial sex acts. Now, I will be doing another video on the lover boy method, which basically is a romanced version of psychological manipulation for a victim, or a guerrilla method, the actual act of violence against the victim in order to force them into whatever acts that they want them to perform. All right, so we're almost through this definition. So let's take it from the top again. Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons, is a crime that involves compelling. We learned what that was. Or coercing. We learned what that was. A person to provide labor or services or to engage in commercial sex acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Okay, so that part is pretty easily explained. I just went through the lover boy method and the guerrilla pimping method. So again, I'll be expanding on that in another video. So if you are new here and you'd like to learn about that, please be sure to like this video and to subscribe, and also share it with people who you would like them to be educated in these human trafficking terms, so that way they know. Now, okay, so let's take it back. The coercion can be subtle or overt. Now, I think that part is pretty significant in sort of wrapping up the top part of the definition, because what we learned is that the victim is compelled or coerced into performing or providing the services, the labor, or the commercial sex acts. But the compelling and the coercion can be done at levels that are subtle or overt, okay? And then it does follow with the psychological or the physical, method. Now, subtle meaning that there's a little bit of coercion and a little bit of this compelling. This definition, this part of the definition especially, goes to show that there is a method that is entailed by some of these situations that don't necessarily necessitate so much compelling or coercion. It can be a little bit of the compelling or coercion to get the victim to do these acts, or it can be overt, where that's more so the guerrilla method, where they're really, really forced and psychologically cornered into doing the performative act that the exploiter wants them to do. Okay, so I think that part is very important, because this is the very definition of human trafficking. It's not by your feelings. It's not by what you yourself think it is. This is what the definition entails. Okay, now the last part, of course, is one of the most important parts of the definition, that minors, if they are exploited into doing these acts, it says exploitation of a minor for commercial sex is human trafficking. Doesn't matter if they were forced, if they were frauded or coerced. Okay, doesn't matter if any of those methods were used in getting the minor to do the commercial sex act, regardless of what it is. However, the minor was put into that situation, it is human trafficking. Okay, that is the definition, whether you like it or not. That is what human trafficking is defined by. So if it, and this kind of, it does get muddy and murky because I'm sorry to use Candace Owens as an example, but I have to, because she has the responsibility and the onus of a person with influence to, say things that are truthful. So you cannot just define human trafficking however you want and compare human trafficking or lover boy methods to 90-day fiance. So that is the definition of human trafficking. I wanted to do this video and make an example of what our culture and our influences is telling us versus what the definition actually is. And I will end with this. If you go to your search engine of choice and you put in human trafficking definition in, and then you put in several different countries such as the United Kingdom or Mexico or whatever you choose, you will see that many of the definitions that are defined by these different countries are similar, if not the same. They use similar words, similar structure. So this is not just something that is new or that the U.S. Department of Justice is just inventing out of thin air. I mean, for crying out loud, this is how even the genesis of, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell being prosecuted, whether you agree on the extent of prosecution or conviction that the Department of Justice has administered. That's not the point. The fact that they were even brought to the spotlight under the court used by that definition goes to show that this definition does have arm power. It does have muscle. So it's not based on your feelings. It's based on how it's legally defined. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will definitely be doing a lot more human trafficking education on this channel, along with all my other deep dives. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to once again do subscribe, like this video, and share this video with so many people, because a lot of people don't know the definition of human trafficking. And quite frankly, it is becoming a cultural emergency. With that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will catch you in the next video.